You have one unheard message. First unheard message.
Well, look who's dodging calls now. I see how it is. We're playing phone tag and I'm it. No, I'm only joking. Sorry I missed your call before. I'm actually at work. Yeah, I know, I finally got off my arse and got a job. It's the midnight shift at the Morrison Stadium. You know, the old football stadium downtown that's been around since like the 50s or something. Well, it was 12 quid an hour and I just couldn't pass it up. Walking around an empty building doing nothing all night. Yeah, thanks. Hey, while I've got you here, I might as well tell you how my night's been so far. It's definitely been different to what I expected. So, I started my rounds at about midnight. The guy who did my induction seemed like he was in a bit of a hurry, so I give myself my own little tour. I walked the perimeter, checked the gates, everything was normal. And at around 1:30, I found myself up in the glass gallery above the stands. The control room up there was weird. The bunker of monitors and switches where they run the lights. The door was open, so I figured I'd check it out, see if there was a coffee maker in there or something. But I found something creepy. It was on the desk, in amongst a stack of typed papers. It was like a notebook page, but handwritten. But I'm just going to read you what I found. I didn't take this job for the money. I took it for the silence. 12 hours of walking the perimeter of an empty stadium sounded like a dream compared to the city noise. But on my first night, the supervisor didn't hand me a manual. He handed me a stained piece of notebook paper. 3 rules, he said. Don't go out onto the pitch when you hear the crowd cheer. Never, under any circumstances, enter the Mascot room. And if you break rule 1 or 2, find the control room before the rabbit finds you. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, right in his face. Is this a hazing thing? Did the day guys put you up to this? But Earl didn't smile. I work days, he said flatly. I just pass this stuff along. I've never had to use it myself, thank Christ. He stood up, zipped up his jacket, and walked out. Didn't even say goodbye. I unfolded the paper. 3 sentences, handwritten in shaky blue ink, exactly how he'd spoken them. I folded it back up, shoved it in my pocket. I figured I'd been pranked by a bored old man. The first hour was everything I'd hoped for. Absolute cathedral-like silence. I did my rounds, upper deck east, upper deck west, the luxury boxes, the press pool. My boots squeaked on the polished concrete. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness. The stadium felt different at 1 a.m. Without the crowd noise, without the jumbotron blazing, you realised how massive it was. How empty. 70,000 seats arranged in a perfect circle. All of them staring down at the pitch like the world's largest amphitheatre waiting for a sacrifice. At 1:30, I found the Mascot storage room by accident. I'd gotten turned around in the service corridors beneath the stands, and I pushed through a door marked equipment storage, looking for a staircase. Instead, I found a room lined with shelves of uniforms and gear. And there, hanging on a heavy steel rack in the centre, was the rabbit. Not a real rabbit. The mascot. The team mascot. Bucky the Hare, or whatever they called him. 5 feet of matted grey fur, oversized head with ears that drooped nearly to the floor, and those eyes. Plastic, sure, but painted with this wide frozen stare that caught my flashlight beam and threw it back at me. The mouth was open in a permanent toothy grin. There was something about the proportions that was wrong. The arms were too long. The torso too short. It looked less like a costume and more like something that had been skinned and mounted. I backed out and closed the door, and made a mental note of where it was. I didn't think about Rule 2. I thought about how quiet it was. At 1:55, I was walking the tunnel that leads out to the pitch, the players' tunnel, with the artificial turf walls and the LED strips in the ceiling. I was humming something, I can't remember what. Maybe that Fleetwood Mac song that was stuck in my head all summer. And I was thinking about whether I should bring a book tomorrow night, or if the silence was enough company on its own. And then the crowd roared. It wasn't a sound that built up. It didn't start small and grow, it was just there. Suddenly, instantly. This wall of noise that hit me like a physical force. Thousands of voices screaming in unison. But wrong, distorted, like a recording playing through the speaker that's been blown out. The bass turned up until it rattled your teeth. The concrete walls vibrated. My chest vibrated. I shouldn't have looked. God, I shouldn't have looked. But I turned. I took 3 steps down the tunnel towards the pitch, towards the open mouth of the stadium, and I looked out. They were there. Every seat, every single one of the 70,000 seats was filled. But the people, if you could call them people, they weren't right. They were grey, flickering, like bad reception on an old television. I could see through them in places. They weren't watching a game. There was no game. The pitch was empty. The goals were dark. They were watching the tunnel. They were watching me. And then, as one, they stood up. That sound. It was just weight. Massive, impossible weight shifting in the darkness. Thousands of pale, featureless faces, because that's what they were. Blank ovals where faces should be. They all turned towards me. And then every single one of them raised an arm and pointed. Not at me. Past me. Down the corridor behind me. I had gone towards the cheering. I'd looked. The rules said not to, but it didn't say why. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. My body just moved. Adrenaline flooding my system. That primal lizard brain screaming that I was prey. I sprinted back down the service corridor, away from the tunnel, away from the pointing fingers. I saw a door, equipment storage, the Mascot room. I didn't think. Panic took over. I threw myself through it, slammed it shut, and threw the bolt. Silence. Absolute ringing silence. I was breathing so hard I thought I might pass out. My heart was a hammer against my ribs, trying to escape. I leaned against the door, gasping, and slowly, my eyes adjusted to the darkness of the storage room. The matted fur. The long, yellowed ears hanging from the steel rack. The frozen, wide-eyed stare. Rule 2. I was in the Mascot room. The suit didn't just hang there. I want to be clear about this, because I know how it sounds. I know what you're thinking. It's a costume. It's fabric and foam. It can't move. But I was there. I saw it. The left ear twitched. Just a small movement, like a dog shaking off a fly. Then the right one. And then that sound started. Chittering, wet, rapid, like teeth clicking together at hummingbird speed. It was coming from inside the suit. From inside the rabbit's throat. The head turned. Slowly. Mechanically. But smoothly. Too smoothly for something that should have been empty. Those plastic eyes found me in the darkness. And then the arms moved. Pushing against the rack. And the whole thing began to peel itself away from the hanger. I didn't want to see the rest. I fumbled for the bolt, threw the door open and burst back into the corridor. The phantoms were there, standing in the hallway, dozens of them, grey shapes with those blank faces. I hesitated, almost tried to bolt the other way, but they weren't blocking me. They were pointing. pointing away from the Mascot room, pointing towards the far end of the stadium, showing me the way. I ran. Behind me, I heard it. Thump, slap, thump, slap. Heavy footsteps, but strange, like something running on two legs that had been broken and healed wrong. The chattering had become a giggle, high-pitched, distorted, looping in on itself like a broken audio file. Every wrong turn I took, a phantom was there to block me, to guide the way with a point of a finger. I didn't understand that I had just obeyed. The thump, slap of the Mascot's feet was getting closer and faster. I found the service door at one of the main access points they use for electrical work, about 4 feet square. I yanked it open and squeezed through. There was a vertical ladder on the other side, bolted to the concrete wall, leading up to the overhead catwalk. I climbed, hands slick with sweat, my breath coming in ragged sobs. Above the stands, there's a glass gallery that runs the length of the stadium. The control room was at the end, a bunker of monitors and switches where they run the lights and the big jumbotron. I could see it from the catwalk, maybe 200 yards away, glowing with that red emergency lighting. And the door was open. I bolted. Below me, in the stands, I could see them moving, thousands of grey shapes flowing through the aisles like water, all moving in the same direction I was running. They weren't chasing me. They were escorting me, herding me towards safety, away from the thing in the Mascot suit. Every time I looked back, they were there, blank faces turned towards the rabbit, keeping it at bay. I reached the glass door of the control room and dove inside. I turned to see that furred hand slap against the glass behind me, the rabbit's face filling the window. Those plastic eyes somehow wider, the mouth open in a toothy grin, chattering so loud it vibrated through the glass. But the phantoms were there too, surrounding it. Grey hands grabbing at its fur, pulling it back. They were helping me. They were on my side. I lunged for the console. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. There was buttons and switches and levers, dozens of them, mostly unlabeled, covered in dust. My eyes raced over them all, until I saw it. A rusted circular toggle, red paint peeling, covered in grime and years of accumulated dirt. Through the filth, I could just make out the letters, emergent. The rest was obscured. The glass behind me cracked, a spiderweb fracture spreading from where that furred hand had struck. The phantoms were losing ground. The rabbit was too strong. I slammed my palm down on the toggle. I didn't know what it was going to do, but I needed to do something. An ear-piercing whistle blew through the stadium. Not the electronic kind they use for goals, the old kind, the steam whistle from when this place was built in the 50s. It pierced through everything, shrill and endless, distorting and echoing until it was the only sound in the universe. And then, silence. I turned around, slowly, my hand still hovering over the toggle. The rabbit was gone. The cracked glass remained, spiderwebbed but intact. Beyond it, the catwalk was empty. No phantoms, no grey shapes. I looked out at the control room window, down at the pitch. Moonlight was streaming in from the open roof, illuminating 70,000 empty plastic seats. I sank into the operator's chair and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for hours. My hand was shaking. My body was shaking. 3:47 a.m. The sun wouldn't rise for another 4 hours, but that was fine. I could wait. I would sit right here in this chair until the day shift arrived, and then I would quit, and I would never set foot in this place again. I was still telling myself this when I noticed the monitors. The control room has screens showing every angle of the stadium. Security cameras, mostly, cycling through different views. The one directly in front of me was showing the pitch. Empty grass, empty goals. But in the corner of the screen, There was a graphic overlay I hadn't noticed before. White text on a black bar. Home 0. Visitor 0. Halftime. 15 minutes. My blood went cold. I looked at the toggle under my hand. I moved my fingers. And as I did, the grime and dust that coated the console came away with my sweat. I wiped the rusty toggle clean, revealing the full label underneath. Emergency halftime. Not emergency stop. Not emergency lockdown. Halftime. I thought about Earl, about his disgusting yellow fingernails and the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. I thought about how he checked the doorway, like he was afraid something might hear him give me the rules. I thought about him saying he worked days, and then he never had to use the rules himself. I realised, sitting there in the dark, that I wasn't the first person to find this control room. I wasn't the first person to hit that button. And I understood what the reset actually did. It didn't end the game. It just paused it. Gave everyone a chance to catch their breath before the second half began. 15 minutes. That's how long I had. I looked back at the monitor. The timer was counting down. 14:52. 14:51. 14:50. I could run. I knew I could run. But from where I was, there was no way I would make it out of the stadium in time. I twisted and turned so many times I didn't know my way. And I'd seen how fast that thing moved. I'd seen how the phantoms had held it back, had pointed me towards safety, it had been on my side. But half-time would mean they were paused too. I stood frozen for what felt like eternity, hand still hovering over the toggle. 7:32. 7:31. The silence was absolute. The stadium was holding its breath. The only way I was going to get out of this alive was to hold our lead and wait. Wait until the timer ended and the home crowd rushed back to save me. That was my game plan anyway. You see, I watch loads of football. But I forgot one basic rule. After halftime, the team switched sides. I forgot until the match clock ticked all the way down to 7 minutes remaining. That's when I heard the tap. I turned to look through the cracked glass door of the control room. Out at the gantry, stretching back into the pitch-black darkness of the stands. They were there, standing on the wrong end of the pitch. I have 5 minutes left now. There's got to be thousands of them out there, pressing high, waiting for their chance to put this match to bed. I guess the Mascot is on my side now. But we're completely pinned in our own half. Weird. Anyway, that's where the pages end. What a load of shit, eh? It must be some kind of short story. It doesn't seem finished. Sorry, this message is running a bit long, innit? I just thought I'd tell you now, just in case I forgot later. It's, 1:55 now, so I'll be home in... Oh, I'm gonna have to go. I just heard something in the stadium below. It sounds like a crowd cheering. I'll call you back once I finish my first round.
End of message. To delete this message, press 7. Message deleted.